Okay, everybody, have I got a treat for you? I am here today with the one, the only, Brad Oxley, Speedway racing legend. So, man, how are you doing today? I'm
good.
excited
Thanks,
to have you,
Junior. Super cool to be in the loft with you at the beautiful Lifestyle Cycles. Cool.
Man, God, there's so much to talk to you about. You've been a Speedway promoter. You are a world champion 2 times. You've raced in Europe. Man, you've crashed the shit out of yourself in the middle of Baja and almost died. God, just give me some stories.
Well, I just like motorcycles. So when I was a kid, my dad was the general manager of Milne Brothers Motorcycles in Pasadena, California. And the owner of Milne Brothers Motorcycles was my godfather and 1937 World Speedway Champion.
World Speedway Champion back then.
And he was America's first motorsports world champion, a man named Jack Milne. And he won that in 1937 at Wembley Stadium in London, England, in front of 87,000 people. So I always grew up like around all these cool, old school Speedway motorcycles and memorabilia, and you know, I was hooked.
So you're telling me Speedway goes back to 1937?
Oh no, there was a 1927 World Speedway Championship.
And now, did they do that on a board track, on a wooden track?
Well,
Or what did they race on then?
board track racing was the original form of all of it, which turned into Class C.
Okay.
But after a couple of terrible incidents at board tracks in the Midwest, where like in one incident, I think 8 or 9 spectators were killed on the boards.
Wow.
And of course the riders were famous for getting splinters and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, a lot of guys died doing that with the Harley Davidson wrecking crew and the big rivalry with Indian and everything. That was banned.
Now,
and then they took the bikes onto dirt tracks, which led to Class C eventually, but of course, Class A motorcycle racing, the first and foremost form of motorcycle racing is Speedway motorcycles.
So tell me, going back to the board racing, because I got a question. Tell me if you know this is true. I've heard stories that they're underneath the boards that actually set kids underneath or during the races to screw the boards back on that started to lift. Is there any truth to that story?
You know what? I couldn't confirm nor deny that, but it sounds like a pretty cool story. I do know that they were exceeding speeds of 100 miles an hour, even in the 20s. And eventually that led to, you know, the boards were super banked, kind of like a bicycle velodrome. And what happened was, you know, the guys would be going faster and faster. And when they came off the proverbial string, all hell broke loose.
They flew.
Yeah, so it ended up being very, very dangerous. It was eventually banned, and that led to dirt track racing.
So how did Speedway racing start? I mean, did someone sit there that they had their Schwinn bicycle and said, I'm going to stick this motorcycle in it, who needs brakes, and go out there and try to kill themselves?
So Speedway motorcycle is like the simplest form of motorcycle racing. 4 guys for 4 laps on a dirt track oval. And I just think that one day, you know, a guy invented the wheel, and then he saw that it was pretty good for like a wheelbarrow and stuff, but to really be stable and go fast, you needed 2 wheels. And then once they had 4 wheels, why waste it on a car? You could make 2 motorcycles, and once that happened, I'm pretty sure the race was on.
So what you're telling me, they didn't want the weight of a car, they just wanted the lightest thing they could possibly build, and just going around an oval.
Yeah, you know, the first motorcycles were converted bicycles.
They all were, yes.
They were. But man, it really, like, the development was really quick, and as soon as there was one motorcycle race, if you ever watch any of that good old school motorbike stuff,
these guys were hooked.
It was, man, the race was on. And so far before even the Indy 500, there was Speedway motorcycle racing, and I believe the very first, before it was the World Speedway Championship, was called the Star Championship, was held in Australia in something like 23.
Wow. Now you've got a rich history in all this stuff. Your family, your dad was a promoter, Jack Milne Cup, and that was part of your father's business, or he worked for him, right?
Yes, sir.
So he worked for Jack Milne, and that's why you have the Jack Milne Cup.
Yeah.
But then you were also a 2-time world champion.
No, I was just national champion.
Just a national champion.
Just the United
You never
States.
did world.
Just the United States. At least it was a good nation. I wasn't like the Panamanian national champion. I was the real live United States national speedway champion.
Okay, so I'm going to do this over again. So you were actually a 2-time national champion.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And so I did go to Europe and race for a couple of seasons and stuff. Okay. And we do have several local Americans from Orange County who were World Speedway Champion. So not only Jack Milne in 1937 from Pasadena, but Samer Malenko from Cyprus, Greg Hancock from Costa Mesa, Bruce Penhall from Newport Beach, Billy Hamill from Monrovia, all went to Europe and became the World Speedway Champions.
And these are all Southern California guys.
Yeah, and like contemporaries of mine that we all grew up racing together.
And some of our riders too. Sean Mad Dog McConnell, he wasn't a world champion, but he went to Europe and raced.
He did.
Fast Eddie Castro.
Yep.
All these guys, now what's the allure? What's so exciting about going to Europe and racing?
Well, in the 70s, when we were having a huge growth spurt in Speedway and, packing the place out with 7,500 or 8,000 people, 20 Friday nights a year, one guy named Scott Autry, who was one of our top riders. I think he had podiumed. He was never national champion, but I think he had podiumed at the national. And he went to Europe and got second in the World Speedway Championship.
And suddenly everybody
had to do it because the sport's really huge in Europe. At that time, it was the base of the sport was in Great Britain. We called it England. Now I think they call it something else entirely, but still England to me. And now Poland is really the epicenter, but it's all over Europe. It's huge.
Europe.
Yeah, even countries like Latvia, all the Scandinavian countries, England, Germany, Poland, huge, Australia, New Zealand, all have World Speedway champions.
And it's really prestigious to get onto one of those teams.
It is.
You have to really be fast.
Yeah.
You have to be invited. It's not something you can just go over there and say, hey, I want to race. Or is it?
So there's thousands of Speedway guys in Europe, but to be an American and to be able to go over there and get a work permit and race, you have to be in the Elite League. And the Elite League's only like the top 60 or so guys in the whole world. And now you're going over there and you're a master of Costa Mesa Speedway, which is a bull ring oval, and you're showing up on these giant quarter-mile plus tracks all the way up to 1 mile tracks for long track speedway.
So how fast are these kids going on a 1 mile track, or even
on the standard quarter-mile track, which would go around like a football field, like a high school running track size thing? They're going like 75 to 85 miles an hour on a lap time. And the bikes are 500cc singles, all running on methanol with no brakes. The bikes have 70 to 75 horsepower and they only weigh 165 pounds.
That's it.
So they're powerful motorcycles, very sketchy.
Why do they want to do this? It's crazy. I mean, we sponsor riders, and I think they're all batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, and every one of them, I watch them, and I would never even think about doing this.
And you're right.
So why did you want to do it? What made you want to get on this thing and do this?
I just think once you are involved in racing, it's just in your blood. I'm like 65 now, and I still want to race my motorcycle, and I'm certainly not going to go out and mix it up with the kids at the Speedway. But I have a garage full of motorcycles. I love my motorcycles, and I think it's infectious, and I just don't think you'll ever be over it. And once you excel at your local racetrack or in your local races, everybody wants to be in Supercross, everybody wants to be a road racer at Daytona or in Moto GP, and everybody wants to be in the Speedway Grand Prix, and Europe is where that all happens.
So now, do you ever go out the night before one of your races, you got the track prepped, and you quietly roll the Speedway bike out there and fire it up and go do a couple laps just for nostalgic reasons where nobody can see?
That'd be so cool.
Know you could do it.
I do think about it, and then I just look at some cool YouTube video from the old days and know that I already did it. I'm pretty busted up and broke off right now, and so I really don't need to need to, but I could.
So is there a chance we could someday see Brad Oxley go out there, dim the lights, spotlight, and see you do a couple laps?
Only if I could get like one of my contemporaries out there with me, you know, Sean McConnell or Bobby Schwartz or somebody like that. Because, I mean, there's really, for me, I raced for 30 years, like 4 and 5 nights a week, and I had my trials and tribulations, and I had a few successes. And really, what really like makes me happy now is to see the events successful, and somebody has to be the promoter. And you know, there's not very many speedway promoters. You know how there's like a tire shop on every corner or a gas station?
Not a speedway track.
Because those businesses are easy.
No.
Being a speedway promoter is not, it's not an easy thing, and not very many people have the skill set to do it. And I just enjoy trying to do the best I can.
I watch you out there, and you know what? It's kind of neat. I watch you. You walk by, you'll greet every single rider. You greet every single vendor. You greet every single Harley rider. You shake everyone's hand. And you know, that's how I got into this. I went there, and you made me feel welcome. And you know, as being an outsider, and I truly was an outsider, and to some degree I kind of still am an outsider, but you make me feel important there and welcome, and it's a big deal, and you make everybody feel that way. And you know, did you get that from your dad? Because Harry was the same way.
Yeah, I mean, he ran it more with a bit of an iron fist, but he was super well respected. But for me, it's just like, I want to have the best racetrack. I want to have the best presentation. I want to have the best and fastest paced program. I want everything to be seamless. And really, I just want to cover my ass, because one of those people who I shake hands with and hug and tell them how much I love is likely to someday go through the crash wall. And I want them on my team.
You don't want
I want everybody on my team. I want to be the good guy that nobody wants to, you know, like, see in trouble.
Well, so now when you prep the track, well, we'll talk about that, because prepping the track can make the difference between somebody having a good night and somebody taking themselves out. And when you're doing the track, are you thinking about that? Are you thinking, okay, I got to change this a little bit because it might be a little too sticky tonight, or?
Yeah, I'm constantly thinking about like who's on the program, what divisions, because we have speedway motorcycles. They have 3 levels of competency, D1, 2, and 3. And then we have sidecars, which are a whole different animal. And then we have guys on Harleys on our really cool Lifestyle Cycles Harley nights. So I'm tailoring the track to facilitate a fast-paced and safe program. So like the last thing I want is a bunch of, and we're trying to run 40 races in 2 hours, which is a race every 3 minutes. So if
that's a fast pace.
Yeah, it's a fast pace to get the guys on the track, racing off the track, and the next race on the track at that pace requires like that it's a clean program. You can't have a lot of crashing and smashing. And we do have our fair share of accidents, but it's relatively safe.
I've seen a fair amount of crashes. In fact, a couple weeks ago at our Harley night, somebody, and I literally did not believe they were ever going to get up. I thought they were going to get carried out of there in a stretcher, and to my surprise, he turned and he head first right into the wall. I saw you just, looking, oh my God, and he got up.
What's unbelievable is most of the top speedway riders all have 2 bikes at the track, because they will literally wad up a bike that takes 4 guys to carry off the track because it won't even roll, and the riders almost always get up. And speedway motorcycle racing is very racetrack dependent. Good racetrack, good racing. Bad racetrack, not so much. So the safety of the program, the speed of the program, and the closeness of the racing is all dependent on the racetrack, and that's my job, to give the guys the best advantage they could have.
Okay, so then I have to ask the question, what makes a good racetrack?
So smooth surface, okay? Smooth surface, grip, traction, but not too much.
So a little wet stick, is a wetter, little stickier track better, or is it dry?
It's all a combination of like the base, how smooth and consistent, mostly consistency, the base is, and then how much dirt times how much water is what determines how much traction there is.
Now, and you do this all yourself. You go out there and you actually build your own track, Every year you come back and it's a bunch of, so I've seen it's a weed patch out there.
Yeah.
So they don't take care of this thing. Then the fair where we have it, they go out and they run motorhome smash up derby. They wreck everything. I've seen pieces of fenders and bumpers sticking out of the dirt. And you have to go out there and you start over, don't you?
We do, and it's a lot of work doing that, but it's got to be perfect for the guys, and being a racer makes me really appreciate more, I think more than any of the other promoters. I can more relate to the racetrack. I'm a fan, so I know what the fan experience is like. I know what good racing looks like, and it's all dependent on the racetrack, and I'm not afraid to put the work in.
So going back, because you have raced these tracks, and it's your history, you know how to make a better racetrack. And you can actually visualize and see the guys racing and know what it's going to take and how the bikes are going to react to it. And now, do you ever change it up a little bit? Do you try to make tracks a little bit different every time so that they don't get used to, I know Costa Mesa?
Yeah, so we have a 42-foot wide corner, and we need about 35 of it to be safe. So normally I run the track wide, which makes the track a little rounder and more graceful for guys, and then with a nice firm base with no ruts or anything. But when we get to like a national championship or something, I'll bring that pole out. It raises the speed up a little, it narrows up the racing line a little bit. I'll stack some extra dirt on there. I'll add more water on those nights, and we'll give those top guys some serious traction. But those motorcycles are prone to just going by themselves, and I don't want too much of that.
I've seen these guys loop out, and it seems like they're racing. Looks like they're in control, and bam, instantly these bikes are standing straight up and they're gone.
Yeah, if you're going 45 or 50 and your wheel's spinning 65, and then you catch a rut or something, then the bike's gonna just, you're trying to get down to turn 3 and your bike will try to go to like Irvine. And that's not good for anybody, and it just makes a lot of extra work for me.
So speaking of, now just so anybody knows here, Irvine is about 20 miles from the racetrack. So, and it really happened. So what is the worst crash on a speedway bike? Because I know you've had a couple worst crashes in your life, but what's the worst crash that you've just crashed your brains out on a speedway bike?
I can tell you I was younger racing speedway. I raced from 15 until about 42 years old, and I was a fast heeler, and I got bumps and bangs and separated shoulders, broken collarbones, banged my head a bunch. I always forget about that. Yeah, it's the head thing's the worst. But I didn't have that many like surgery style injuries, but I thought when I was 42 years old and retired from Speedway that I was gonna have a second career as an off-road racer. My son is the multi-time Baja 1000 motorcycle champion. And so I did a lot of riding and pre-running with the boys, and I really kind of hurt myself a few times on the 450 off-road, and it's a little less controlled, and I'm old.
One really bad experience, and I don't think it was pre-running. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, you were just out riding by yourself.
Yeah.
And you came across, and out in the middle of the Baja desert, you center punched a deer.
Yeah, my dad lives in like the most remote part of Central Baja near the Sierra Guadalupe Mountains, which are fantastic. And I love doing my little 60 or 100 mile loops on like a Saturday morning when I'm down there visiting him, and I do a few loops a week. And I was just out having a great Saturday morning on a beautiful day, riding my motorbike in February, and I had come off some single track, which was part of the Jesuit Trail, like the original Jesuit Trail that the missionaries, built the missions with.
Okay.
And I just came onto a 2-track and grabbed 5th gear, which is like maybe 50, 55 miles an hour on a 450. And the deer committed suicide in front of me and came out of, I was doing like 55 and deer was going somewhat faster. I don't know how he did it, but I got a glimpse of the bushes, and the next thing I know, I was just hitting them, and I ended up having a, dissected aorta, shredded right lung, 22 broken bones, 3 dislocations, and a concussion.
Wow.
And at that point, I was solo in the Sierra Guadalupe in the middle of remote Baja, and I I had no
almost dead.
no communication device, and I had to make it home.
Okay, and now there's even a bigger story after that. Okay, how did you get rescued? How did, because this is a really cool story, and you know, not a lot of people, I'm sure, hear the story, but I think it needs to be told.
So it turned into an ordeal where I had to get the bike up, which was, you know, I had all these rib fractures, and my heart wasn't connected, and my shoulder was separated, and my hip was dislocated, and I had to get the bike up, and it was an awkward position, so it took me like 30 minutes of kind of feigning, seeing stars, getting a drink, making a few attempts. I finally inched the bike around, and then I was smart enough to use my foot to make some little holes for the wheels to drop into, and I knew I had one chance to get the bike up, and as I was picking it up, I could feel my ribs popping and cracking, and fortunately I was on the modern Honda 450X, which is a fuel-injected electric start motorcycle, and I finally was able to swing my leg over it and start it up, and I put it in second gear, and I just hooked my hand on the throttle, and every time I hit a bump, I was getting those little throttle inputs that you don't want on a motorcycle. And I rode like 20 odd miles back to the house, and then I got a 100-mile car ride to Loreto. And then my son is a corporate pilot, and one of his friends came down in their fancy, like, you know, Citation jet and picked me up and flew me, and I got to Mission Hospital 41 hours later.
And you were still alive.
And I was still alive. Wow. And I had lost 5 units of blood, and I got the cool 2 chest tubes, and then I got the stent in my heart, and I got my right lung, and then I got 8 titanium straps and 164 screws that are still in my ribs. And then later on I got a new hip, and I still have 2 more surgeries to go.
Oh geez. And this was 5 years ago?
No, I think it was like right into COVID. So I'm thinking it was in 2020 or 2021, February 10th of 2021, I'm gonna say.
Okay. Wow. And that's an amazing
You can
story.
still hear I'm a little hoarse, and like I don't have the same voice I used to have.
But you're here.
I'm here.
Wow. Yeah. And you'll go, and now, even better than that, you still go out there and ride now. You're back doing it, I think.
Yeah, I'm riding, and then I like to ride my mountain bike, and I just crashed my mountain bike at the pump track with the kids and separated my shoulder again and broke a couple of ribs, so I'm pretty sore right now. But I'm just too literally, my wife thinks I'm an idiot, and I tell her I'm literally too dumb to insult. So, you know, I'm just rolling with it. I like my bikes.
Oh my God, so racing is in your blood. You obviously like pain. I
don't really like the pain, but I do like the wind therapy. I like being out in the wind. I like it.
And you're just gonna keep going. Nothing's gonna stop Brad Oxley.
I'm gonna keep going. I have like small, medium, large, and extra large motorcycles, and I ride them all.
Wow. And you didn't close the door when I asked if there was a chance to ever see you on a speedway bike again.
Yeah, I think in the break here I might get my new right hip, and then I'll be in shape to do it. I'm kind of stiff right now.
Wow. Well, I got to tell you, I want to see that. And if anybody watches Speedway, anybody knows your history, anybody who's been around this, everybody's going to want to see this.
Yeah, they all think I'm an idiot, but that's okay. I just love the motorbikes.
Right on. Well, Brad, listen, thanks for coming down here today. Thanks for hanging out
Thank you.
with us.
Thanks for all your support at Costa Mesa Speedway. Check us out at Costa Mesa Speedway. You know, it's like a interweb site, and you can see our schedule and all about the event on there. And check out YouTube for Costa Mesa Speedway Harley Nights. There's some cool stuff on there. And
it's on Facebook. It's on Instagram.
Come join us at the races. Don't be scared. It's a cool family event.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to come watch it.
Well, wait. Don't go anywhere until you like and subscribe to make sure you get notified every time we post our how-to videos, our product reviews, and all of our amazing interviews with your favorite racers and industry icons. I'll see you guys next time.